Welcome to ISE 5870, Introduction to Resilience Engineering. This is the very first lesson, and we're going to use the concepts that we start talking about here to build a bedrock or a foundation for what is resilience, what is resilient performance, and maybe what things aren't resilient performance, both specifically not resilient or brittle, but also other aspects of systems performance that are complementary but not identical to resilient performance. Let's get started. Before we get started, we're going to start thinking about what are some other terms that maybe you've heard of. We're going to start with reliability. What is the role of an engineer? Because again, this is resilience engineering. What's the role of an engineer in making systems reliable? What's the goal of reliability? Because maybe you think about all these words the same. Oh, resilience is good, and reliability is good, and optimality is good, and robustness is good. Oh, all these things are good, and maybe they're all the same thing, or maybe when I say them, I think that they're the same thing, or I want to explain, or I want to convey that they're the same thing. But specifically, we know that reliability or reliability engineering or highly reliable organizing, it's about consistency. So, okay, reliability is about consistency. Well, is that what resilience is? Is that what resilience is about? Is that consistency? Well, we'll put a pin in that for just a second. Also, let's think about another concept, this idea of a system. What does it mean that a system is more than a sum of its parts? And how does engineering for reliability incorporate or not incorporate this? And what we find, again, as we think about reliability, one of the underlying assumptions is if you understand the reliability of the components of a system, you can mathematically determine the reliability of the system. And what that does not take into effect is any interactions between the components or the constituents of the system. Again, in the most classic reliability. So this idea that maybe a system is more than the sum of its parts, that interactions exist, interdependencies exist, this isn't necessarily what you get when you're measuring or thinking about reliability. So maybe resilience is something over and above that. Maybe something different than that, than reliability. So let's go a little further. What is resilience? I talked about this other thing. Now let's talk about resilience. And for this class, resilience, in the greater world, resilience can mean a lot of different things. But in this class, we're talking about resilience engineering, and this is inside a systems engineering department. So we're talking about resilient system performance, and we'll get into the orthodoxies of resilience. That's more like a noun, or resilient, which is an adjective or an adverb, and why those are different. We won't get into that today. But what is resilient system performance? And again, the world has a lot of different definitions of resilience. It's becoming actually very popular. There's really little agreement on what it means, or that different groups are meaning different things. We've increasingly come to believe, and we increasingly, people are telling us it's a pressing societal need. We need to be resilient. It is a new scientific challenge, and it is also an opportunity for engineering innovations. But are all of these in all of the different definitions of resilience? So I took a smattering of popular culture references to resilience or being resilient, and I wanted to share those with all of you first, and we can start to get a feeling for what waters are we swimming in before we get into what is a resilient system performance. Let's get started.
The things I learned about resilience through my time in prison is that human beings, I believe by nature, are very resilient. I had some significant obstacles to overcome, including, long-term solitary confinement, which they estimate is designed to drive a person crazy after 90 days. And what I found in that environment is that hope is probably the cornerstone of resilience. As long as you have hope, you can come out on the other side of anything. If I focus on the purpose instead of the pain, then I can get through to the other side. And that's how I live my life. And to me, those things embody what resilience really is.
What is resilience?
Resilience is so many things. You'd expect me to say that I'm biased. I love the subject more than anything. But one of the things that I think we need to really focus on is the fact that resilience is not just bouncing back. Most of us have witnessed the fact that what we tend to bounce back to is no longer there by the time when we recover. Resilience is fundamentally about bouncing forward better than you were before your predicament found you, about being unapologetic and unrelenting, about gaining lessons learned, expanding, growing through every challenge, good, bad, or otherwise, continuously growing.
I love that.
All right, so we have two. We have a couple more that we're going to go through, but maybe resilience is about hope, or about believing in yourself through these really terrible times, and drawing on something inner to do that. Maybe it's about growing, maybe it's about learning, maybe it's about again dealing with these really difficult circumstances and coming out on top. Maybe that's what resilience is about. Let's keep going.
I know there's gotta be rain if I want the rainbows. And I know the higher I climb, the harder the wind blows. Yeah, I've gone to sleep night after night, punching a pillow. But do you know the darker the night, the brighter the stars glow? Right through the cracks.
All right, so again, a little bit more maybe gets out of the picture that in order to be resilient, maybe something bad had to happen to you. There's these bad things, and from the bad things, can you bring forth things to make good things happen? Maybe that's an important ingredient of being resilient, or exhibiting resilient performance is your response to bad things. And I'm going to show you another bad thing right here.
You can write everything down if you want to. Be brave enough to write every one of your goals down. But I'm going to tell you something. Life's going to hit you in your mouth, and you got to do me a huge favor. Your why has to be greater than that knockdown. And I love it. Buster Douglas got knocked out. Nobody ever got knocked out by Mike Tyson and ever got back up. It was almost a 10 count. He was stumbling. They were 4, 3, 2, 1, and ding, 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 saved by the bell. And he goes to his corner. The whole world is like, yep, that's it. Once he comes back out, that's it. Mike's gonna just hammer him. And exactly that. Mike Tyson came out like, I got him. I got this kid up against the rope. Listen to me, many of you right now, life's got you up against the rope. You can't give up. You can't give in. Listen to me, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And if life's got you backed up, I need you to do what Buster Douglas did. Buster Douglas started fighting back. The world was shocked. Goliath has been knocked down. What happened? And they went to Buster Douglas and they asked Buster Douglas simply like, what happened? And Buster Douglas said, listen to me, it's real simple. Before my mother died, she told the whole world that I was going to beat Mike Tyson. And 2 days before the fight, my mother died. Buster Douglas had a decision to make. When his mother died, he could die with his mother, or he made a decision, I can wake up and I can live for mom. And he knocked Mike Tyson out simply because his why was greater than that punch. His why was greater than defeat. His why was greater than his trial and his tribulation. And I'm telling you, if you don't know what your why is and your why isn't strong, you're going to get knocked out every single day.
All right. So I get pumped up by that stuff. It doesn't hurt that the Buster Douglas is. All right. So I get pumped up by that stuff. It doesn't hurt that the Buster Douglas is a fellow Columbusian, fellow person born in Columbus, Ohio. So this idea of like inner reserves, like you have to pull yourself and go grab those inner reserves and you get everything you can out inner reserve. You get kind of versions of that or flavors of that with the Katy Perry song as well. But again, we're talking about systems here, and so does it mean that system resilience is it's just a bunch of people that are resilient, and they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and they can pull on those inner reserves, that their why is greater than the challenges, and they can do that. And there's a dark side to that, and it's in these quotes. And actually, these are quotes from colleagues of mine, knowing that I do work in resilience. And I think they're really very, very, very profound, both in healthcare, actually. One, I'm less interested in having a resilient healthcare system if it still can't diagnose skin color on dark skin. Where does equity, quality fit in the resilience? On the other side, it's always baffled me why an organization or employers need to be resilient. Resiliency to me says, suck it up and deal with it. Suck it up and deal with it. Why not work on the health of the environment? So, and we actually see in some studies when we have these measures or markers of resilience, or these measures or markers of people that are in this place to draw on their inner reserves, there actually is a pretty strong signal that they're actually also more likely to get burnt out. So at the system level, I do think there's a connection between this individual resilience that people are very excited to talk about, rightly so, and what is going on at the system level. But it doesn't get all of that. So let's start, instead of starting ground up and building up, from these more popular notions of resilience or resilient performance, let's start from the system itself. Let's set a new mission or goal or trajectory there for the system. So the folks that have been studying systems resilience or city resilience or community resilience or an organization's resilience, you'll see that these don't conflict with the other definitions or the other accounts of resilience, but they definitely have a different starting point or a different perspective. This idea to be able to resist, absorb, accommodate, adapt to, transform, and recover from the effects of a hazard. Up to city resilience, the ability to resist, absorb, adapt, recover. Cope with external stresses and disturbances. Ability to bounce back after a crisis. Again, we'll have some issues with bounce back. We'll talk about that later. Absorb change and disturbance. So an organization called the Resilience Engineering Association, which I'm a member of, actually tried to put all those together into something very concise. And what they come up with, resilient performance, is the ability to sustain essential services in the face of ever-growing dynamics and uncertainty. This is a pretty long-standing definition from that association. There's a branch of resilience engineering that I ascribe to that actually has adapted that and extended that as the ability to adapt to sustain essential services in the face of ever-growing dynamics and uncertainty. Now, that should give you a small bit of pause, like, adapt to sustain. Wait, change in order to sustain. That's kind of weird. Well, we'll get into that. But it goes further, like, what are those functions? Like, what are we really talking about? And I think this fills it out nicely. Say the ability of a system, any system, big system, small system, people in the system, technology in the system, all the kinds of systems, to the ability to adapt in order to sustain essential goals, structures, and functions in the face of ever-growing dynamics and uncertainty. As it gets more difficult, as it gets more uncertain, as it gets more challenging, what types of adaptations have to happen in order to sustain those goals, structures, and functions? And what are the capabilities that the system has to have in order to make those adaptations? That's where we're going to start. And again, this idea of adapting to sustain should make you feel a little uneasy. What on earth, I know how to sustain, and I know how to adapt, and that's just going to change things. But how do I make changes in order to keep something consistent or sustained. That's really interesting. What we're going to use as basically our central foundational rock here is the theory of graceful extensibility. That theory, extensibility, has that adaptation in the fabric of the theory. And what it tells us, and we'll go into all 10 of these, sorry, there are 10 of them later in the course, but we talk about managing the risk of saturation. What has to happen in the system as it gets really close to the boundaries of its performance envelope? When it gets close to that place where I don't know if I'm going to be able to perform very well out here, how does it have to change? How does it manage those risks of saturation? Second, this network of adaptive units, and this one goes right at that idea. I don't want to diminish Buster Douglas's achievements, but you can't. What the network of adaptive units tells us is that you can't just keep going to an internal well. You need to reach out, which he did in his trainers and his coaches and his family and all of those kind of things. But explicitly, how do we reach out? How do we recruit? How is there reciprocity with the folks we recruit with the agents we recruit with? And the third one is outmaneuvering constraints. So again, as I'm seeing constraints in the world, I need to be able to deal with them, even if I don't know what I can't predict what they were going to be. How does a system do that? So we are also going to use the perception action cycle. This is a generalized perception action cycle. It is modified from the original 1976 version from Ulrich Neisser. And we're going to start thinking about again, we talked about adaptation. We also talked about capabilities. What are the capabilities? And the capabilities of a resilient system are around these three aspects. How do I detect what's going on in the world? How do I interpret what I've detected? And how do I respond once I've done that interpretation? Now, there's another set of these that look similar from Eric Hollnagel that we'll see later in the course, and we'll compare those. And then the other thing is, again, this network of adaptive units tells us that we need to be able to coordinate. So each of the different agents, each of the different parts of the system is going through this loop of detecting, interpreting, and responding, and they have to coordinate those efforts with other groups that are detecting, interpreting, responding, and in that way, that synchronization allows for greater and greater resilient performance. So what is resilience engineering? It's understanding complex networks of adaptive units. It's based on the findings from very diverse traditional units of inquiry, lines of inquiry: engineering, control systems, biological systems, economics, ecological systems, societal systems. And it leads to new ways to design, manage, and operate specific parts of the system and specific scopings. Systems, teams, we call all of those units of adaptive behavior. So I'll end with this, and this is a recurring question, and if you stick around for most of these videos or through the entire course, you're going to get sick of it. Is this resilient performance? We're going to keep looking at different systems, and this is where we're going. We're going to look at different systems and say, is this resilient performance? See you next time.